Hi there, and welcome to Be a Global Citizen, the podcast that explores the concept of global citizenship through the lens of value creating education. My name is Scott Bauer, and I'm a Soka researcher and educator. I hope you find the discussions, stories, and insights on this podcast to be valuable and inspiring as we strive to become global citizens who are committed to living a contributive life. Enjoy the conversation.
My name is Reem Olaby, and I'm based in California, Sacramento in specific, the capital. And I work as an associate professor of pharmacology and biotechnology at California North State University.
Hi, Reem. Thank you so much for being on the podcast. I'm very excited to connect with you. This is our first time meeting actually virtually, even though we are in the same state of California. I'm a little bit down south over in Los Angeles area while you're in the just above where the Bay Area is, right? So Sacramento.
Southern
It's so
California.
wonderful to connect with fellow Harvard folk. You are embarking on your journey in the same program I did a little while back. And I think it's just incredible to see this diversity of individuals and professionals coming together to really make impact. That's, I think, the emphasis that especially like Dr. Scott talks a lot about. What is your impact? And the fact that your background is in the sciences and you're professor at a university, Cal State, right? Northridge?
And North State.
North
They
State.
always confuse it. Yeah, they always confuse
Yeah.
it, which is so fun. It's like a niche university. So it's medicine, pharmacy, dentistry, doctor
Okay.
of psychology, health sciences, BSMD. So it's health
Right.
sciences mainly.
Well, I'm so excited to learn about what brought you to that particular university, and what about the sciences really gets you passionate about, getting up in the morning and impacting the lives of young people. So, wanted to pass it over to you and ask if you can share a little bit about the milestones in your life, what brought you to the work, and yeah, I'm just very excited to have this opportunity with you.
Sure. So, I know that your podcast, or let's say the show, it is a show, is about global citizenship. And um, when I think about it, I mean, I don't remember, let's say, when was I first introduced to that, right? But the what impacted my life and what impacted um, what I want it to be and what I wanted to join was, how my parents raised me up, actually. Because I felt that, and once I knew that I was going to be with you, I started reflecting. You know, we always take it for granted. Yes, I'm a global citizen. Oh, yes, I care about all humanity and I care about. But then I just wanted to know, when did it really start? And this is when I went back to my upbringing, and I realized that, oh my God, I was brought up on global citizenship before even I knew the phrase, right? So I remember them always teaching me, how there always has to be respect for all people, no matter what, you know, um, how I should always think about the bigger picture, about, contributing to the humanity, even with a very small piece, if it's a very small piece. And they did make me appreciate the teeny tiny milestones that we achieve on a daily basis, and how it's connected to us being true citizens, in this world. And not only in my country, which is by the way, I'm originally from Egypt. I'm originally Egyptian, Syrian, Albanian. So apparently, they combined a couple of countries together in under one family. So that's a global citizen as well. But we've never put the borders into consideration that much. It was always about the values, about the responsibilities, about serving others, about, being a beam of hope in the middle of despair, which is now, very often that we are in a lot of, unfortunately, disappointments, sadness, depressing events here and there. So this is what guided me to be or to reach where I am today. which you will find it as global education somehow. Because it's not like I'm only, a pharmacist, or like I'm only a scientist working on a specific research. Even within science, I worked on breast cancer, I worked in neurological disorders, and then I decided to put the neuroscience hat, and you know, I felt that, yeah, this is what I want, a neuroscientist, in neurological disorders, whether it's, a neurodegenerative or neurodevelopmental, and so on and so forth. So just to wrap up this part here, the reason why I love science, and when I say science, it's not only the technical science, it's also the humanities, because it is science, everything is science, right? Is that Louis Pasteur once said, science knows no country, because the knowledge belongs to the humanity, and it is the torch which illuminates the world. So you can see that science is one of those global languages, like art, like sports, and the part of the art is music. So we do have several global languages, and I believe that those are the languages that do bring people together, including technology.
Wow, thank you so much. There's a lot to already unpack just from what you've shared, and I'm so happy that you started off with your parents, because parents are just so important, right? Without them, we wouldn't be here. And I think being fortunate to have parents that really instill those kinds of values that you shared, I think is like such an important way to like really think about our own character development, right? And um, to have this mindset about whatever profession you end up going into, that it's about making some kind of contribution, albeit maybe very small, to the world, right? To humanity. And the fact that it's, yeah, you put this emphasis less so on the actual like where you came from in terms of like the national border, but the values that were so important to you, like things I think about, that you shared about were like respect and appreciation, bigger picture, right? I think all of that is just really essential. So thank you for starting off on that note. And then the sciences piece, yeah, I've heard that math has been talked a lot about as like one of those kind of like global languages as well. But it is so true, right? Now that I think about the science piece of it, that science has transformed so much of the world that we live in. Without those advances in sciences across many different fields, we would not be, it'd just be vastly different, right? All different systems really like benefit from new breakthroughs in scientific research. So the fact that you're contributing to that as well is so great. But with this mindset of there's like a certain kind of morality and ethics I'm getting at, I think I'm picking up on, that I think is also very important. Maybe we could start here when it comes to the like going into the sciences. I know that science can really lead to incredible breakthroughs, but it also could, if not really thought carefully, lead to some terrible things, like an example being like a nuclear weapon, right? With an incredible destructive, capacity that the creators of it maybe didn't truly understand how it would be used. And so, could you maybe speak a little bit about like in your long journey in education to become, like a professor and to study, right, the sciences in depth. Were you carefully thinking about like the humanities side of it right from the beginning, or did that kind of come about a little bit later? Just kind of curious about your own development in the sciences.
Definitely. And by the way, Scott, you did tap into something that is very important, which is that science is a double-edged weapon. I mean, everything in life has two sides, right? And science is one of them. So speaking of humanity, I feel that it's always important to bring humanity to whatever we're doing, because at the end, whatever we're doing is aimed at the benefit of humanity as a whole. And if we miss that part, then I think we would be missing the overall goal of whatever we're doing. And that's the core of being a global citizen is, okay, when I'm working on this research, it's basically, let's say if it's a research that aims at developing a drug against a specific disease or a treatment intervention, it's basically to benefit humanity. If I'm working on developing a specific educational framework, it's to benefit humanity when it comes to education, whether it's K through 12 or, higher education. So, uh, whenever we do something, I think it's very important to keep reminding ourselves of the main purpose of why we're doing it, the why we're here, why we're doing it, and what do you want to achieve at the end. And whenever we put the humanity aspect into it, it does give it a much stronger meaning. And it does refrain us from the biases that could come up, or from the cherry picking sometimes. Even in research and science, you will find that, sometimes it's not like we want to prove or find a question, an answer for a research question. Sometimes you feel that no, actually, we want to find a specific answer for that question. And if that answer is not there, we will force it to be the answer, which will never benefit humanity. And I can actually tap into, speaking of global citizens, I can tap into an example. So, for instance, in the 19th centuries and before that, let's say 19th and early 20th century, there were several pseudoscientific, studies that, let's say, tried to link race and skin color, with intelligence, and that, oh, if that person is from this skin color or that race, then they're not intelligent. And, intelligence is only for a specific race or a specific, or people with specific skin color. And the reason why this is a pseudoscience is that whenever we do a scientific research experiment, there has to be different components and different factors that we should put into consideration. So, for instance, if we're doing such a study, we need to look at the socioeconomic status. We need to look at the cultural, environment. We need to look at the educational differences, the neighborhood itself, and we need to put aside any implicit biases that we have, any racist motivations, that we so or else it won't be a scientific research study. It's a biased, non-scientific or pseudo-scientific study because it's not trying to prove something in general for the benefit of humanity. It's actually trying to prove something to discriminate against specific people or to marginalize more, against specific race or specific ethnicity. So that's one thing. The other is, I feel that, genetics, for instance, as a field is amazing because it did show us how similar we are as human beings. And that is why the concept of global citizenship is amazing because we are 99.9% identical genetically. And if someone said, but okay, how is it possible that we're different in colors and we're different in this and that? I'll tell you that it's only 0.1% when it comes to those visible differences, which means skin color, eye color, height, disease risk. All these accounts for only the 0.1% difference. So we are 99.9% identical, and then that 0.1% is the difference. And if we're talking about the skin color specifically, that's 0.01% only of the 0.1% difference. So to wrap this up, when we talk about scientific research, I think objectivity is always the key. I think it's always important to put into consideration that as global citizens, we need whatever we work on to have a global impact, one way or another. When you throw a rock in the water, it starts creating, those circles. So, I mean, even if I'm impacting the closest circle to the rock, and then whoever is taking over and continuing in other countries will continue expanding that impact, right? So as long as I started that dynamic interaction, in the science field, in my specific, let's say discipline, then hopefully it will create a cascade effect that will end up, hopefully, in benefiting humanity. And we can see all sorts of scientific discoveries and breakthroughs in different fields that started this way.
Wow, thank you so much, Reem. And I love the imagery of the ripple effect that you were describing, because it stems from the actions that we take, and and then also recognizing that those ripples that are cascading right across the lake, the water, whatever it is, it's the same body of water that all these other people are taking their actions, and that kind of speaks to the ways in which one ripple can come up against another, or form to join a bigger ripple, right? But it's all, kind of connected or kind of interacting on that same plane, and having greater awareness as far as how that interplay is, I think, is really important. But the quality of the ripples, I think, is also very important when you're talking about the pseudoscience, right? With skin color being associated with intelligence and how that ties into racism. It's it's we need to like really understand like where is this like pursuit for like science really coming from? Is it just to, as you said, cherry pick, or to like prove a certain bias that you have, or is it coming from a genuine pursuit of truth, right? Which is very big. It's a loaded word, and like a lot of people kind of toss that around very lightly as well, right? But I think that there's something really noble in that ongoing inquiry that is not just about proving oneself, but also really just being engaged in like a genuine pursuit with a lot of other people, right? Because again, that scientific community, it's not just the U.S., it's not just Egypt, right? But it's that global language that you were talking about. We're talking, it's trying to add one small layer to this kind of mountain, right? Of knowledge that's been building over hundreds of years, right? And so I think that what you're speaking to in terms of like connecting the scientific research with what does it mean to be a global citizen to be really important. And you started off talking about how it's with kind of anchoring oneself in humanity, right? And to have this kind of like belief in humanity, I would say this desire to contribute to humanity, that's incredible. I find that a lot of people don't think that way, or yeah, I mean, the incentive structure of the field in general. Sometimes people think of it as, oh, I'm going to do science or become a doctor because I will make a lot of money, right? Or I'll have job security, or I'll have status. Those are actually three of the things that when I was thinking about like, what do I want to do with my life, in high school, I considered going down the healthcare, kind of pathway. And it was for those reasons. Humanity did not make the top five, in terms of like incentives. So my question is, why is that the situation? And in your capacity, like, why is it that like putting that humanity piece at the forefront not more prevalent in a lot of schools? And then what are you doing in your capacity to address that, since you deal with a lot of young people at your university? And so I'm sure that this comes up immediately on day one. Just from what little I've already learned about you, I would imagine this is crucial that they really understand what it means to contribute back to humanity.
Definitely. I mean, it's all about compassion to start with, and compassion is one of those sort of, let's say, fertilizers. If we want to create a global citizenship land, then one of the great fertilizers is, or let's say, cultivated land is compassion. So the reason why I think we tend to forget about the concept of global citizenship, and tend not to have humanity on the top of the list or the priorities is the capitalism and the the extremely fast pace in life, not only in one country, but in so many countries, because unfortunately, capitalism and whatever comes after is contagious. It's exactly like the viral infections. It's like, and it could be in disguise. It could be hidden, right? So that's one way. It's like, it's basically pushing people to think money, to think material, to think, what can I, save? What can I have? And it does feed into, I don't want to say selfishness, but it is somehow. It's like, okay, us first, and then comes the rest. And that's actually, there is a name for it if we're talking about our country first and then the rest, which is nationalism. And by the way, I'm not against nationalism as the phrase itself or what it really means. The issue is always anything extreme, anything that is polarized. So exclusive nationalism or extreme nationalism, this is what's wrong. You know, it's totally fine for us to grow up to be dual citizens, citizens of our own country, of our own origin, and have that sense of belonging, that sense of pride in our heritage and our roots. Um, and feeling that we want to give back to our, country and our roots. Nonetheless, it's also great to be a dual citizen, meaning a global citizen. So nationalism means that I, have that sense of belonging, that I do love my country, this is from my perspective. But the issue is the exclusive nationalism, meaning that my nation is first at the expense of anything that would happen in the world, even if the whole world is falling apart just because of my country, or just because I believe that, yeah, that's the best situation, that's the best thing to happen because my country comes first, and then the whole world can, go on fire. It doesn't matter. So that's the exclusive nationalism. And then also there is a polar side to being a global citizen, which is the extreme globalism as well, which means that I'll completely ignore the national identity. I'll completely ignore the culture, I'll ignore anything that makes my nation like unique in a way, and I'll just focus completely on the universalism sort of. So in my humble opinion, I feel that if we had a balanced approach, that dual identity, where we can be proud of our nation and feel responsible to the wider world and keep bringing that to whatever we're doing as dual citizens, this will definitely bring things into perspective. It will create that balanced path. Um, we can call it, sorry, like cosmopolitan patriotism. It's like being rooted in our culture, but we're upholding universal values. We're being global citizens at the same time. And we're looking at local issues, and we're also seeing how can it um, correlate with global issues. We're seeing how can there be smart solutions that can tackle both, things like that.
I totally agree with you, Reem. I think that the balanced approach that you're speaking to, in other terms, like 'cause you don't know this about me, but I'm also a practicing Buddhist of an international organization called the Soka Gakkai International. But in Buddhist terms, it would be considered like the middle way. So never to go in one extreme over the other, I think is really important. And I found what you said about like kind of like describing what that balanced approach is, being that it does come from a rooted sense of like you are proud of the culture, right, that you came from, right, in the nation where you were born. But then you also feel this responsibility for the wider world, right? Understanding the interconnectedness of various actions, especially in the times that we're living in, where it's instantaneous, right? One post goes out and then the world kind of changes. One threat goes out and the compounding fear that we've been experiencing for who knows how long is suddenly heightened to a place where now like words like World War III get tossed around, and it's very serious. So in that sense, my question is, how do we get to that place where, because I think people feeling like really proud of their nation, I don't know if that's like, that's part of the whole like nation building project that I think countries know what to do in terms of approaching that. Right, it can be bound up through like the mythology of it, right, the figures, the even sports, and the cultural output of that country. But what about making people feel responsible for the wider world? I feel like that's really complicated. And so how do you how do you like understand what we need to do as far as getting people to take responsibility? Because people don't even want to take responsibility over like small things, like who didn't take out the trash, let alone the bigger international kind of things that we see taking place.
Yeah. You mentioned two amazing things that I would love to discuss. The first, by the way, is that you tapped a little bit into the social media and the power of social media and its impact on the global citizenship. And this is something that I'll, um, you know, um, share a couple of key points after I answer your main question, which is how can we strive as global citizens, right? So I think, or how can we start if we did not think of ourselves yet as global citizens? I think the first very important step is self-awareness, looking into our own values, looking into the privileges, the biases that we have, specifically the implicit or the unconscious biases. We all have these implicit biases and unconscious biases one way or another, right? So revisiting those biases and seeing whether they are hindering us from becoming those global citizens that we want or not. And I think that this is happening nowadays worldwide. We can see it everywhere. People, even that we would never think it would be possible for them to be global citizens, are becoming global citizens, and very strong global citizens that advocate for others and that speak up, and that are, I always like this, that are the voice for the voiceless. So that's the very first thing. It's the self-awareness. It's also looking into uh, or looking outside of our bubbles that we're living in, because we tend to grow in a bubble somehow. It depends on, of course, the upbringing of every one of us. But some people tend to grow in a bubble. Let's say a very small town where everyone looks alike, everyone has the same values, everyone does the same thing. So then it's shocking when they start seeing other cultures, other values, other people that don't look like them. So it's just about accepting, that with grace, and then the shock will start fading away. And let's remember, and that is why I always give the benefit of the doubt for, like, whenever I meet someone and then they look at me, oh, she's hijabi, or oh, she's a Muslim, or oh, she's this or that. It's just that I don't feel offended. I try as much as possible to look beyond. So it's either that they did not get exposed that much to people like me, so they're still in that shock phase, and it's like, oh, I don't know what to do with her. Like, why is she here? Go back to your country, or whatever it is. But actually, I try to understand and give them the benefit of the doubt. And then it's either that I respond with a smile. Most of the time I respond with a smile, and not necessarily that I have to say anything. Or sometimes I take it as an opportunity to open a conversation that shows the shared humanity, shows that at the end we're the same. We have the same dream, which is to live in peace, to raise our kids in the best way possible. And if not kids, to grow healthy, things like that. So that's another thing. It's empathetic listening and being graceful, and learning from the experiences and the voices that are different from our own, and trying to build bridges instead of walls. So fostering that authentic connection, across the different cultures and the different communities. And what better place than the US? we are a salad bowl, not a melting pot. We are a salad bowl with that colorful combination and tapestry of people from different origins, different religions, different ethnicities. So we are definitely lucky to be living in a country that is really cosmopolitan. It is really, bringing together people from all over the world, like the Gulf region, for instance. In the Gulf, also in United Arab Emirates, like in Dubai or in Qatar and Doha, you will find people from different countries. But in the US, it's much more evident. So it's the best way to get trained on becoming global citizens here in this country, by the way. So that's basically in a nutshell, like staying self-aware, listening deeply to others that are different, building bridges, like I said, and not walls, um, staying committed to learning about others, staying committed to listening to others, staying committed to uplifting others, regardless of the differences between us. So all these things are really, really, I feel, are very important. And this brings me to the second point, which I told you I wanted to tap into quickly, and which is actually contributing to um, the flourishing of global citizenship around the world, which is the social media and its impact on global citizenship, and how it has so many positive impacts that we can see nowadays, like amplifying the voices, and like giving the marginalized communities a platform to be heard, which was not the case before that. Like building awareness, right? So basically, what the social media nowadays is doing is it's breaking all these geographical barriers. It's exposing every single one at the comfort of their own home to the global challenges that are out there. The different wars, the human rights, the pandemics, the climate change, and oh my God, when it comes to the pandemic or the COVID-19, right? And then also it does help in fostering solidarity, right? It's also a great educational tool. Nonetheless, this takes me to the negatives, because unfortunately, even though it's an educational tool, there's still a lot of fake news that can spread quickly, and sometimes that fake news can reinforce the nationalism, the extreme or the exclusive nationalism, instead of that global unity, if you can. And we can see that as well. And it can create that digital divisiveness. Yeah, right? Divisiveness, where, it can increase the gap instead of bringing people together. In addition to that, unfortunately, still until this day, not necessarily that everyone has equal access to the internet, right? And this does increase the inequality when it comes to whose voices are heard versus who are not. And that is why I really appreciate those influencers or people that go above and beyond and try to identify those communities and go with their resources and their privilege in order to again be the voice of the voiceless. So, yeah.
Wow, thank you so much, Reem. There's so much that you just shared, and like I feel like there's like two different kind of like big areas, right? One about striving towards being a global citizen, and what are some of the like to-dos for us to get to that point, and to really like have that be like embodied right within our actions, not just the words, but really following through. And and then the social media piece is huge. So let me first go back to what you shared about the becoming a global citizen, and you started with self-awareness, and I think yes, definitely wanting to understand what else, like how am I operating within this environment, because it's not like it's our own reality, but there's so many right different ways in which people are experiencing their reality, while also kind of constrained by certain structural things going on, that maybe we're all feeling, but to varying different extents, and I think what you talked about in terms of like the differences that we come up against when we look outside of the bubble, let's say, um, to not like shy away from that or to fear it, but you said to accept these differences with grace. That really resonated with me. That, and then also you saying that, like, when you encountered, people kind of commenting about the differences they saw just in your, physical appearance, like wearing a hijab, and making certain judgments, right, based off of just that simple fact. You said that you kind of combat that. Well, you didn't use the word combat, but you address it with a smile, and I think that's just so. It's so simple but very profound, and I think it has to come from a genuine place, because you're not doing like a smirk, right? But it's coming from a good place, right? Yeah, you're like, genuinely, I want to extend you this grace, and it's up to you whether you reciprocate that, right? Whether you extend your hand in return. And so, you know, I was thinking about, I kind of grew up in a very much like a bubble kind of space where, I mean, there was like ethnic diversity, right? People coming here, and from different countries, but there was like this kind of cultural assimilation of process that was just, it just very much felt like, oh yeah, here we are in like the suburbs of like Los Angeles, what we affectionately call the South Bay, and it's, it I don't know, there's a certain samey kind of quality and certain similar aspiration and certain kind of, again, like just bubble effect. And it wasn't until I left the bubble and started traveling and living in different countries where suddenly I was confronted with, you know, pretty major differences, stark realities that I hadn't seen before. But that was all very uncomfortable and sometimes led me to be very angry with that particular culture. Sometimes it left me very angry with the culture that I came from. Um, it left me confused. It produced a lot of emotions that I think a lot of people would say is, summed up in one word: change. But a lot of people don't like to change, and so, yeah. What kind of like advice or encouragement would you have for those who you really are encouraging to, like, set forth on this path of change towards becoming more self-aware, towards looking or walking outside of that bubble? Yeah, what would you tell someone just on the street in terms of how to do that? Because I know for me, like, being surrounded by people who had done it already was a big part of me just wanting to go abroad. But then, I took a very dramatic way of like just living in South America for 7 years. It's dramatic. People don't always do that. So for those who are still in the bubble, like, what would you tell them?
Uh, I would tell them, first of all, that they are extremely brave to be thinking of changing. So they have to be proud of themselves. Even if they did not yet think that much, I'll give them that, because hopefully that will push them. Yes, I'm brave. I can change, you know. And I would tell them that one thing they can do is keep practicing empathy on a daily basis, meaning, you know, uh, whenever, because we go out every day almost, right? And whenever we look right or left, we will see different people, and not necessarily that everyone will look like us, right? Actually, it's very rare that we will be in a community where everyone looks the same, everyone from the same race, ethnicity. So one thing I always try to do is, whenever I'm like, let's say on a in a traffic light, or whenever I'm walking, or whenever I'm in a mall, I just like to skim, and look around and see the different people, and see how they're carrying themselves, meaning not in a judgmental way, but you can see that everyone has their own battles. You can see people thinking, consumed, or talking to their kids, or doing this or doing that. And I did, throughout the years, train myself to do something, which is, whenever I look around and then I feel that someone is struggling, I send prayers towards them. okay, you know what? That person looks really tired or sick, or maybe they are on a wheelchair, or, there's something going on. There's a challenge. So I hope that they lead a life uh, which is happy, which is fulfilling. I hope that that person, passes whatever, stumbling blocks they're facing in a smooth way. Um, and this taught me to think differently. Going back to we are human beings. It's not like that person is from this place and that person is in this with this religion and that person is. Instead of looking at the differences, I'm looking at people as a sack of emotions and struggles and aspirations and goals and dreams and identities, within. But so that's one very important thing, is to keep reminding ourselves to practice empathy on our day-to-day lives, and to make those conscious choices, you know, uh, whenever we do something, and those choices need to showcase our responsibility towards each others as human beings. Um, Another thing that would make it a little bit easier for anyone who wants to put the global citizenship mindset hat on as well is to don't take it as a lump sum. Okay, I have to. It's all or none. It's not the case. I mean, it's a gradual process. Us being global citizens is a gradual process, and it starts by us acting locally, right? And ensuring that, okay, whatever we're doing locally will one way or another have a global impact, and patting ourselves on the back and being kind to ourselves that we are contributing to the global world one way or another through our local actions, as long as it's intentional and as long as it's meant for, hopefully at the end, you know the global impact. And of course, the most important thing is not to keep isolating ourselves and keep staying in that bubble. We need to stay informed. We need to identify channels, whether it's media channels or social media platforms or people, specific influencers that we trust, that are known to be objective and not subjective. We need to identify educational channels and routes that will help us in staying informed about the different global challenges that are being faced on a daily basis. We need to see beyond the borders. We need to push ourselves to in order to be true global citizens, we need to look at what's beyond our country, what's beyond those borders, and understand how, again, our local actions and even our country's actions can shape the world. And again, what better example than the United States of America?
Well, wow. Thank you so much, Reem. Based on what you just shared, the way that you shared it, I could tell you're a very humanistic teacher, educator, because you started off right from the beginning saying it comes with acknowledging how incredible and how important that first step is of wanting to change, and really praising that individual by saying, you are brave for doing that. And because without that first step, nothing else is going to happen, right? So I think that's so amazing. Practicing empathy, definitely, and understanding that people, because we know ourselves the best, and I don't know about you, but there's definitely a lot of doubts, or questions, and complicated emotions. I laughed when you said that people are like sacks of emotions. I'm like, yeah, I get that. And I think your action, albeit unnoticed, is to really send that goodwill and like send prayers for those people who might be really struggling that day. And it's this gradual process, like that you were talking about, of understanding the cumulative actions that we take, and the consistent efforts that we make to maintain that mindset, and also to put forth that belief that, yeah, I am a global citizen, right? I'm not like I don't know, the Secretary General of the UN, but but in my own capacity and in my immediate community, like I matter. What I do matters, and the people that I'm impacting matter. So that community side of things, I think, is really important. And another piece too that I want to just bring up that I think is really important is the word hope. We live in times where I think hope seemingly is in scarce supply. And I say that just because of the onslaught of, news that we get about what's happening, between, like in international relations, what are the things happening on social media, and maybe even just in our immediate environment. Maybe it's a difficult family situation. Maybe you just got laid off. A whole host of things that people can say, oh, we live in hopeless times. Um, what would you say to or what do you say maybe to your students? Or I was also thinking of like your two teenagers. Like what is it that you can offer in terms of like words of encouragement that would remind people of like where the hope is, or how to maybe make hope themselves?
Uh, Great question. So when it comes to my teens, I always try to share with them um, that them trying to be the best possible within their own capacity and their own capabilities will definitely have an impact, a positive impact on their surrounding. Um, and again, you know, the same thing, the cascade effects, right? So it's just that it's simple. I try to always tell them, to put themselves in the shoes of others whenever they are going to do something, say something, do a specific action, because that's a very important component of humanity, is that empathy, that, feeling for others, and thoughtfulness, right? And of course, with a limit. It's not like I want them only to think of this and then forget themselves, because I mean, we need to think of others, but we cannot forget ourselves behind, right? That's very important. We need to think of ourselves, build ourselves, be satisfied, be full from within, in order to be able to be those global citizens that are giving, that are thoughtful, that are, shining and radiating when it comes to other people. So I always try to tell them to focus on within, and and try as much as possible to tackle whatever emotions they have, speak with us openly, although of course it's not always the case. Sometimes they like to keep things within, and then they want to deal with it on themselves, like on their own. um, but it's just knowing and acknowledging their feelings, and that whatever negative feelings even are valid, and working on it, and then taking it as a turning point for them to be those strong global citizens that can help others. And one thing that I always share is we rise by lifting others up. So it's not about competing with others, it's about competing with ourselves. It's about us tomorrow being a better version of us today, and so on. And when we compete with ourselves in a good and healthy way, it will create a better us on a daily basis, and that better us will create a better society, will create a better environment, will create those global citizens that we need in this world. Global citizens that are thoughtful and kind, and they do not hold grudges, they do not hold hate, they do not hold that fierce competition that I want to be there, I want to show, and everyone else is, oh no, I need to suppress all the other voices. So that's, in a nutshell, what I can do with, or what I usually do with my kids, and try to talk to them in a way that not to be boring. I try to hold myself back sometimes from talking a lot, because I know that it's, you know how it is. So that's for my teens. And then in regards to my students, especially that I'm teaching, the clinical side, like I'm teaching pre-med, pre-pharmacy, medical students, nursing students. And the nursing students are actually the last line of defense. I always repeat that in every lecture. You are the last line of defense for your patients. Remember that. And remember that you will deal with patients from different ethnicities, from different races, from all over the world. So remember to put your implicit biases aside and deal with them as human beings. The clinicians are a great example of global citizens without them knowing. And that is why as part of my master's degree, in Harvard, I'm working on a framework. It's called Human Framework. And this framework is actually a framework that aims at um, humanizing or bringing compassion, empathy, and connection into technical programs like the nursing, like the engineering, like the clinical training. It's about creating those classrooms that, even though they're so rigorous, and unfortunately they do create that fierce competition between the different students. Unfortunately, it's how it is. um, it's about fostering safe communication, fostering the student autonomy, dealing with the student as a human being, a holistic human being. It's not like a machine that I'm feeding into information and that machine is going to take the exam and that's it. So that's basically the human framework, and it's human. It's an acronym. So H stands for holding space, and this has its specific tools. You know, fostering that psychological safety. The U stands for understanding. So this means recognizing the learner's context, the type of learner, the challenges, the burdens that the learners are facing. And this also has specific tools that I use. And then the M means make meaning when it comes to my courses and the instructional design and how I need to connect theory to practice to bring real life examples and things like that. And then the A is for ask and adapt. And this is very important in the education process because it's how we seek feedback and how we respond to feedback and how we pivot strategies in real time while the student is taking the course, not towards the end of the course, in order for the students to get a sense of, oh my God, I'm changing real time. I'm advocating for myself and for my peers, and I'm contributing to making this course better while we're studying it, while we're taking it, and not towards the end of the course only. And then the N, which is the last part, is nurturing. So this means supporting the holistic development of the student from the academic perspective, emotional perspective, professional perspective. How can we provide them with what's beyond our course? So for instance, I'm teaching pharmacology, but one of the things that I developed, for instance, was like, okay, here are the list of, professions that you as nurses can actually, or jobs that you can work at. It's not necessarily like, oh, I'll be an RN in a hospital. There are so many other things. And also when it comes to emotional, the importance of the professional um, identity formation in the clinical world and in the clinical education, right? So all these things I do try to put into account whenever I, deliver my courses and whenever I deal with my students.
You are truly just walking the talk because everything that you shared, it just really exudes that framework that you just really wonderfully and like very succinctly explained. And I love that it's an acronym, and then each of those like letters like has like there's just so much meaning behind each one of them. So your children and your students are very fortunate to have you in their lives because you're showing them how it's done. And I think raising the next generation, right, really emphasizing like these values from a young age, and then having that inform bigger decisions, career, but then even in relationships and beyond. That's really, I think, the momentum that we need to build towards creating a better world, a more peaceful world. So thank you so much, Reem. And unfortunately, we are coming to the end of our conversation. It's been such a delight and joy to have you. And I wanted to ask one final question, which is a book recommendation or movie recommendation.
Okay, so in regards to, let's see. let me choose a movie. So there are actually a couple of movies that I really like, and one of them is Rule Breakers, and that's a new movie actually. There's a new platform called Angel. I'm not sure if you heard of it. It does they have great movies. They're all, they all have missions. Most of them are true stories. So The Rule Breakers is a movie that talks about Afghani girls, and then the role model who had I think a robotics startup, and how she encouraged those Afghani girls to participate in the global competition, and how they won at the end. So this and she seeked collaboration, and she seeked help from people in different countries, and I think the US was one of them. So the reason why I feel that this is a movie that is connected with global citizenship is the cross-cultural collaboration, which is one of the very important uh, cornerstones when it comes to global citizenship, right? And mentorship. Another thing is breaking the barriers, right? When it comes to education, when it comes to gender equality, when it comes to innovation. That's another thing that this movie did focus the spotlight on. And the most important thing is how to amplify the marginalized voices that we were discussing before, and how to or focus the spotlight, or to highlight the struggle for the right to learn, the right to thrive, the right to go beyond our bubbles, like we were discussing. So that's the first movie. The second is Patch Adams. And you remember Patch? Have you watched it? It's Robin Williams. It's a beautiful movie. And the reason why I love it is that it focuses or sheds the on the on the importance of empathy, dignity, and compassion, or compassionate care when it comes to healthcare, which is something that is global, right? And it does advocate for accessibility when it comes to healthcare. And again, this is another thing that we need globally as a global outreach, right? And it looked into challenging the status quo or the systemic indifferences, and it looked into reimagining medicine in a way that is inclusive. So that is why I love Patch Adams as well.
Love Patch Adams as well. Yeah, that's Robin Williams is just such an amazing actor to convey that emotion and the heart behind the profession. And then I haven't heard of Rule Breakers, but I'm looking forward to checking it out. So
Yes,
thank you so much for those two wonderful movie recommendations, Reem. And again, I'm just so happy that we had this opportunity to connect. And it's been very insightful, very encouraging. I hope you feel the same. And I want to give the last words to you as we wrap up. So any final thoughts?
First of all, I would really like to thank you, Scott, for inviting me to your amazing platform, and may you always be a voice for the voiceless, because apparently I can see that, and a source of inspiration for many, and may we see more and more global citizens around the world that bring people together instead of divide people. And only then will we see a better world, a better environment, and only then will we be stronger stewards of this environment and this world. And thank you so much.